That was incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I tracked it. So we went into the 10 on January 19th. And I saw him, I thought I had written that down. He went into the cycle on January 19th with the 10, and I saw him on we went to, I think we either went on the Saturday or the Sunday. Let me see. So it would have been on the 21st. So he was 2 days in. And I knew as I was standing there.
You saw it? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, you know, and I was standing there, I was raking his feet and talking to his soul. And I've been working with his soul, and he went through the experience of Alzheimer's to learn how to receive love. Mm. So I'm looking at him and I'm like, wow, I hope he's learning to receive love so that he doesn't have to keep, you know, but it's his journey. So, but I asked his soul, and his soul, his second mission in the Alzheimer unit was to love himself. So then I asked
the love for the self. It's part of the vessel of love.
So
wow.
2 days after there, I'm holding his feet, raking him, and I'm asking him, his soul, did he learn how to love himself, or does he need some more time on this before he goes? And his soul didn't answer me in a yes or no, but I got this picture of sunflower fields. Mm. And then I felt like the burning bush, you know, the energy just flowed through me, and I was like, okay, he has, I feel like that's a yes. Yeah. So it's probably not going to be long. So then my mom had surgery on the 25th, which would have been how many days into it? It would have been, let's see, the 10 was on the 19th. So 6 days in, which would have put us about somewhere around the 30, 55, right in there. My mom had surgery the night before. So when we were in the 30, 55, right. He appeared to me in her kitchen. And then the next day was her surgery. And 2 days later, we went into the 3. Wow. And then we got home from the hospital on the 28th, and on the 29th, he went into the 2. Mm-hmm. And on the 30th, the very next day, they called to say that they were putting him on morphine. Mm-hmm. So he, you know, he dove in, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then he died February 2nd in the 52. On the 6th, we went into the 29, and the day after his birthday was on February 10th, and the day after that, February 11th, was when we went into 32. And the day that was hardest for me was his birthday. The day before the 32 was, which we would have been in what? We would have been in the 48, the 57.
All the fear gates in the spleen.
Mm.
Wow.
And those were the hardest days for my mom too. It was just really challenging days. So he didn't make it all the way through, but you know, real magic, because the day he appeared to me, I looked at the moon calendar and we were in the 22.
Wow.
And then he transitions on February 2nd, which was the 22. And we were, he
55.
transitioned at,
55, right?
yep, 5:55. So he transitioned on 2/2.
And they belong together. Wow.
So he got his spiritual freedom right there.
Yeah.
On at the 55 on the 2nd. So, you know, he didn't make it all the way through.
But he did make the 29, right?
He didn't make it to the 29 was on the 60, and he transitioned on the 2nd.
Okay.
But I will say this, it was so fascinating to me. I didn't know this part. I knew he had asked for burial at sea, wanted to be brought out to water. He did not want to be embalmed. He wanted to be cremated. And when I was there with my mom, she actually pulled out a document that he had notarized, and it was his death wishes. Like, this is how important it was to him.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I don't want my name in the paper. I don't want an obituary. I don't want anybody seeing me. I don't want to be embalmed. I want my ashes brought to sea. And which I just found completely fascinating. And then so he dies on Thursday. On Friday, my mom had most of the everything done and paid for, except for that we had to go to the funeral home because of filling out paperwork for the death certificate. So we go, and they're gonna cremate him. And he had 3 days before they cremated him.
Yeah.
It just kind of worked out, you know, because they didn't
Yeah.
cremate him until Monday.
Right.
So
he had his 72 hours.
He had his 72 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know in what line he transitioned at that moment?
I looked it up. I can look at it again. Let's see. I didn't write the line. We were in the 52. I don't know what.
Well, we can look that up maybe another time, but it's interesting for me because I was mostly fascinated. Of course, the sequence blew my mind, like, wow, there's a mechanic for it. But what interests me is what are you going to experience into the Bardo? And Ra, I feel like he doesn't share a lot about it in the audios and in the video that I created, but I do feel like, okay, so when you start in the 3, there's all this chaos, and then you go, you know, there are the 3 lines that you go through, and how he flips the lines around in experience, and that if you go into the 4 as first, then you get to meet all those acquaintances and friends, and sort of speak. And yeah, I was wondering, like, what did your father then might have experienced? You know, it's beautiful for the people that stay behind on Earth to know what was his experience when he left this planet, you know?
Yeah, he hasn't communicated that with me yet, but I'm going to answer your question about when he died. We were in the 52, and that was about keeping still. Yeah. Okay. My experience, and I had people who know me who do work affirm this. I was experiencing his flight, like movement, and people were texting me, man, your dad is flying. Like, there was so much energy, you know, like he's flying, which that was cool. But I know he was making the rounds because he has one sister who's still alive, and his sister's older than he is, and she has dementia too. And one of her sons was very close to my dad, and he came with us for all of this, and then he had a boat, so we were able to go do the thing. And he said to me the week before we went to see my dad, he said, "Oh, my mom's been telling me she wants to go see your dad." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's nice." And then on the Monday, when they called about the morphine, I text messaged him and I said, "Hey, you know, if you're serious about taking your mom to see dad, I'd go sooner than later, because they've started the morphine. I mean, it's the end this year. It's just a matter of how many days he's going to last." And so he did take his mom, and they saw him on Wednesday. And I feel like he was visiting her.
Like, come.
come. And she went. She went. I feel like, you know, that was super powerful. Yeah. And it was the next day. So I feel like he had been making the rounds, you know, of
saying goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So I didn't get to that part where so talk to us about that. Share that story about when you go in a certain number, that's when, because I'm curious, because you know, sometimes I'm working with people and a loved one comes through, and I'll say, you know, this person is here, and it's not that I claim that I'm a medium, but when, you know, energy is energy to me. It doesn't matter if they're in physical form or not.
Right.
And you know, I've listened to just this week it happened. I was working with a couple, and the husband's mother had died last year, or transitioned, however you want to say it. And she showed up, and she was like really insistent. And I was like, you know, I know we're working on this, but your mom is here and she really wants to talk, and she's talking to me so loudly that I can't focus on what you want. Do you want this experience? And they were like, right. Yes. And then at the end, she was telling him, they asked her something, and she said, "Oh, well, when I came, my mother and father were here." And she described it to him. And then there were other beings there, and she described the whole thing. And then they asked her, "What about Uncle Tim?" So, I don't know who the hell's Uncle Tim. I don't know. So I asked her, you know, "What about Uncle Tim?" And then this masculine energy shows up, and it's almost like he's sitting, and she just puts her hand on his shoulder, and she said, "Uncle Tim is here, but he's very, very quiet. He doesn't want to say anything." And they just like busted out laughing, and they go, "That's Uncle Tim." When he sat and didn't say anything, you know, and I started laughing. I go, "Well, there's always something that comes through where, you know, oh yeah, this is real."
Oh wow.
You know, so anyway, but yeah, it's interesting, because now that you are saying this, I'm wondering if you could expand on what Ross said there.
Yeah, I don't know all the lines by head, but what I can remember, I can share, is that this is why these 72 hours are so important, and the body needs to be left alone. And I shared with you that I think what he means is that, you know, don't take any organs, don't do any investigation on the body, just leave the body. You know, you have to bring it to a cooling center. I know that I don't exactly know how that works, but that I know. And then, oh, sorry. And then, you know, just leave the body, because then the soul can, the design crystal goes back to the earth, but the personality crystal can make use of the still active neural networks. It needs that density energy in order to get its final freedom with consciousness. So when it really is loose of this density earth, it goes back like into the everything and goes back to the crystal bundle, and it has no individual consciousness anymore. So his trip is to wait a lifetime for that moment, for that 72 hours, which can feel like hundreds of years, but for us on Earth years or Earth time, it is 72 hours. And he describes that each line you get in those 72 hours, you go through 3 lines because of that moon phase. It takes so many hours. And then each line has a theme. And so the thing that you're going to experience has to do, of course, the gate that it's in, but also the line. And the thematics are kind of like the 6 lines as they are for profile or any gate. But they have like, I don't want to say a flipped thing, but there is a similarity on how you can perceive. Like I said, with the 4th line, it's about, suddenly seeing friends or acquaintances and they welcome you, so to speak. And then when the 3, because that's trial and error and bumping into things, the 3 is really like can be experienced as chaotic, like, oh my God, what just happened? And where am I? And what am I going through? And he described it as a lot of chaos, however you want to imagine what chaos means to you. And then with the 5th line, he speaks about the leadership. And the 6th line, I'm not going to say anything because I can't really remember exactly the lines, but it's kind of a story that you get to experience. And I loved that. And it made me very interested in wanting to go deeper, but I don't know if there is anything more about the Bardo. That's why I kind of wanted to go into the lessons, into the teachings of other peoples who went through it with Ra himself. Maybe he shared it with them. So that's
I love what you're saying, though, what you're sharing, because it also gives us the experience that in death, everybody's just, it's not all the same. People are going to have different experiences.
Exactly. Yeah.
What gate are you in? What line are you in? It's so different. And so,
but what I did find fascinating, and maybe it's people can perceive it a little bit different than I'm going to speak on now, because how I understand what he is sharing is what he's saying is that if you encounter ghosts, it's because they haven't died properly. So I feel like if you haven't had contact with your father yet, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
To my understanding now, because it means he has completely transitioned and he's back at his crystal bundle for incarnation or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I really loved about it, that there is a way. He says the Bardo, these teachings are for the living, because you can't tell the dead, right? But I feel like for me, because it was a personal desire to know, is that I have a choice to be prepared. So when I die and become conscious of that I'm leaving my body, me being my personality crystal, is that even though I encounter the chaos, if I die in a 3rd line, I go like, this is the chaos. Let me enjoy.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
No right, no wrong. Let's have the experience. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess that when beings like I've been thinking about this, about the personality consciousness going back to the personality crystal. And so I've contemplated, well, so when I have the experience of someone's soul showing up to speak, is I'm hypothesizing I'm communicating with the design crystal.
I guess. Yeah. I didn't want to say it, but I guess you're communicating with the design crystal, because that goes back to the earth. And I don't know if you listened about that part again, how he speaks on where it is in the core and then a layer around the core with the inner earth, and that the new models are lying there to be birthed, so to speak. And then even the new the new human that is going to be born is just, these models are lying there, he says, they're waiting for their right timing.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful also that we are truly unique. He says this model is now and it's never going to come back. It's like also mind-blowing, right? Yeah. Because you think, oh, I look like you, we do the same things, we like the same things, but you're totally not. And we don't even look alike. Your model is from not even from a series, it's really unique.
Right. Fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah. Can I ask your father's name?
Yeah, Robert Edward Mouton.
Robert Edward. And last name, sorry?
Mouton, Mouton.
Oh, never heard this last name.
It's French. It's sheep. It's how you say sheep. Mouton.
Mouton. Mm-hmm. Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay. You want me to run it now?
No, you can whenever. Unless you want to talk about it in our story, then.
Yeah, but I don't know the lines yet. So it would be fascinating if I create a chart and go back to what the lines mean. And maybe because I was kind of, what's the right word for it? Because I want to say I responded to you writing, and I was like, oh, that could be a lovely way to have a question and then start writing. So I'm sensing now that I want to create the chart, look at the lines again, listen to Ra again, and then try to create the story by that for you.
Oh, wow. How cool would that be?
How cool. I don't know if I'll be any good, but I feel a response to try it and to play with it and to see what we feel about it.
I would love that. Love, love, love that.
Yeah. Will do. Lines. Story. Yeah. Wrote it down on my money-making notebook.
I love that. I love that. Well, you know, Elizabeth, my friend who lived here with us for a while, while she was here, you know, right before she came, her father was here. Her father transitioned. And then in the middle of that, someone very dear to her, Kalani, transitioned. And she was doing all kinds of work with them, with their energy. So I'm assuming the design crystal, since the personality crystal goes back. But I mean, really powerful things like one of the most powerful was she's really into perfume. You know, she has smell. And she and Kalani, he liked nice cologne for men. And they had this, she introduced him to some cologne, and that was his thing. And so one day she was really contemplating him, and she was going to go into Seattle. And she said to him, you know, she broadcast to him, I really want you to show up for me today in some unmistakable way that it's you, you know, some sign. So she went to Nordstrom's and she was looking at the cologne, and it's a kind of smaller store, so they don't have everything, and they don't carry this brand's men's cologne. They only carry the women's perfume. So she wanted to smell it, and she was looking around, and she saw that they had some products that they don't normally have, and she was kind of looking at them. And then she asked the lady if they had something. And the lady said, I think it was the men's cologne, you know, because she wanted to see, you know, she was. And so the woman says, we don't usually carry that, but let's look over here. And they went over to some shelf, and there was one bottle of the men's cologne. And so she knew, you know, like, okay. She goes, the salesperson was like, we don't carry this. I don't know how this is here. We don't carry the men's
She
line.
said, I know, but she couldn't say it. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And another time she was really wanting a physical manifestation of him. And we had gone to eat lunch or something. So we went to a place not far from the house, and it's kind of in a big open air shopping center where all the stores are kind of on the perimeter and the parking's kind of in the middle. And so we parked and we had Panda with us, and it was taking a minute to get us like settled to get out of the car. And so we're sitting there getting, I don't know what we were doing, but anyway, we're sitting there, and he drove kind of a old Nissan Pathfinder that was black, and it had this very specific luggage rack. And we're sitting there, and this vehicle kind of turns in, and it was a black old Pathfinder with the luggage rack and a Hawaiian license plate. And we both just went,
Wow. Yeah.
How do you create,
Yeah.
it's crazy. And then we just busted out laughing. Of course,
Yeah.
Kalani showed up,
Wow.
So she's done some really powerful, interesting experiences. So I feel like it must be with the design crystal.
Yeah, or when they don't transition the right way. So when somebody gets an accident or gets killed, because that's what Ra is speaking about, that in certain ages, certain cultures, so many souls were lost because there was this, or they were buried too soon, or they were killed. So there was somehow there wasn't that 72 hours. So many souls were lost, and that they are wandering in our world.
Yeah, like Kalani, I know he had a 72 hours because he died in his sleep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
And they didn't find him for a few days. So
Perfect.
yeah.
It's like the perfect transition, right?
Right.
I always dream like, if I can I go in my sleep? Yeah.
Right.
My grandmother had the same, and my grandfather too, both in their sleep.
What a blessing, right?
Yeah.
What a blessing.
But you're so right, and it makes sense. I had an insight on it when you were sharing. I kind of lost it, but it makes so much sense that you're talking to the design crystal, because that's what really stays behind in the earth. Yeah. And even how they come together, that dance of the design crystal and the magnetic monopole. So I don't know. I'm seeing things, but I can't bring words to it, but it makes total sense.
I love how in the Bardo he does, and he probably does it in a bunch of different places, but it really made sense to me how the design crystal and the magnetic monopole move through the body graph on their way to Earth.
Right.
That was super powerful.
Yeah. I feel the verse coming up because I'm not religious, and I haven't. I have a Bible, but never kind of read it. Is the from ashes to ashes, from dust to dust. That there is this sentence in it that you go back into the earth, and that makes total sense with the design crystal.
It's actually, I don't know, exciting to me to think about.
Yeah, it's in lack of a better word. But what I do love about our conversation is that there is this it's not a popular topic to speak on, death and dying. And then of course the Bardo, that's spiritual, that's kind of opened up, but not the process of it all. And I kind of love that we are maybe breaking open that conversation, because death is such a normal part of life. When you're being born, one thing you're certain of is death and taxes. Right?
Totally. I mean, and I guess for me, I always, one of the things that Ross said in the Bardo that I did read was about, he talks about how it's with the three, at the point of the three, when the people are in their initial choosing, he talks about how it's somewhere in there that in the three where people, the things like Alzheimer's and dementia come into play. Let's see if I can
find it.
Yeah, I just had that note. Talked about how many people get stuck at the third gate, and he said,
yeah,
the physical, he talks about that physical impact of the three, and that many people get stuck there, and that's when we see Alzheimer's, dementia, and he also brought in it could trigger terminal hypochondriacs, and that 3 in general is a trigger for genetic diseases, and that some people will enter that, and then they enter into an artificially extended death process and simply begin to go through deterioration, mental or physical deterioration.
Fascinating, right? Because it's a part of the channel of the mutative circuit, or the individual. I always know that part, and now I don't. It's the format energy channels are there, and the middle one is the most mutative. It's in a pulse, and because you're now saying, it feels almost like that because of if they get stuck there because of the artificial, the mutation to go through death can't happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you too about talking about this death process, because my experience with death and dying is probably really different from other people's. And I think it's important that we witness a range of experience. For me, because I have always had, since I was a little girl, this awareness that, oh, they're just not in a physical form. They're still there.
Right.
That I don't, it's not, okay, it's a loss of physical form. That's something to be sad about. It's not the end for my relationship with that being. I mean, I still have communication with them. So maybe I don't experience death like other people do, which doesn't make my experience wrong. It's just different, right?
It's just different. Yeah.
And, when my dad had Alzheimer's and I was working with his soul, and the soul explained for me really clearly, he needed to learn how to receive love. I was like, oh, I can so see that. And through Alzheimer's, he had to receive love. People had to take care of him. And then his body started just giving out, and literally people were doing everything for him.
Yeah.
And so he had, and then at some point he shifts to, he wanted to learn to love himself.
Yeah. Wow.
And, how powerful, who can fault someone from wanting to, experience that in their life? And who cares, that it was through Alzheimer's or dementia, or, it's still experience for the personality crystal,
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's here. I feel it's learning about how it is to be in a dense body, be kind of being trapped, because that's how Ra also says it's kind of a trapped being stuck. It has nothing to do. It hovers above the head. It has nothing to do with the body, but it's still there. It's conscious, and it's observing, and it's the passenger, and it gets to experience life through a body. It has an individual consciousness thanks to the body. If we didn't have that, it could not experience physical love. And how beautiful that you brought that up, that he could experience love only through being cared for. Because I have the utmost respect for people in healthcare, because I always say they give love to a stranger. How about that?
What a service to,
Absolutely.
I mean, incredible. I'm so grateful,
Too.
I'm also moved by really the love story between the design crystal and the monocle.
Yes. Yeah, me too. They have to separate and then come back together, and wow. And how Ra describes it as a love dance. Right.
Yeah, that's incredible to me. I mean, if we put it into human perspective, right? It's like you come into this world with your beloved, your design crystal in the monopole, and you agree to sit in the room and never.
Right. Being able to be together. Right. Yeah. Yeah, so many things. I don't know, each time when there is this topic or just even talking about that, so many other things. It's like this octopus that wants to, the sense is what I'm getting, what I'm trying to explain is that everything is connected in each way you can even comprehend how things can be connected. And people can say that, but when you start seeing and feeling and sensing that in literally everything, by having this conversation.
Whoa, right.
I can't even think. I cannot even comprehend. It's just an awareness suddenly, like, and then I have an explosion in my head.
I had it in my body. I was experiencing it in my body.
I was seeing it like almost like the what they call the how the universe started. What's the name for it? The Big Bang?
The Big Bang, yeah. Yeah.
And
Just
that
a
everything
microcosm
contains
of that.
everything. Yeah. And that's maybe why Ra says that this is what creates the illusion of separateness. They are still connected. They are still together, and yet they are apart because of the illusion of who we think we are and the body, the universe. Again, I'm trying to explain something that I cannot comprehend right now.
Well, it's kind of like I was, as I've been reading this and listening to him talk about the love story, for me, I contextualize it like we go into this party, we're in this room, right? This container,
right?
And we're across the room, and we can, see each other, feel each other, but and then there's this other being, this personality crystal, who's doing all the talking and the.
When we go maybe a little bit further, I go like, okay, so when the body dies, he gets to enter that room
and be at the party.
Because he is still making use out of the neural network that is still having these electro thingies going through that body, even though the heart stopped. The electricity is still there. Wow.
And then I'm thinking about, okay, so the personality crystal then has the awareness of everything, not just what's in that room, but
everything,
everywhere, all at once.
Yeah. What a liberation, right? It almost makes me feel like kind of happy at the moment that I become aware that I'm dying. Like, okay, now my personality gets to party,
Right?
And I'm happy for my personality crystal.
Right. It can, be exciting to think about, and I'm thinking about the level of awareness that's possible, because I feel like all of that's possible anytime. It's just we don't really perceive it, or maybe it's overwhelming when we do. Well, maybe some people do, but the level of awareness that's possible is kind of incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm also sensing maybe we are limited now in our knowing, in our brain knowing of what really goes on with that personality crystal and how it interacts with life and our bodies and such. We're just going on what Ra is sharing in his Bardo teachings. But the funny thing is that when you go back to, you know, the Tibetan Book of the Death, the Egyptian Book of the Death, because the brother brought it up that he was reading them, and I was like, oh wow, another connection that somebody is interested in that. And then him sharing some stories out of that, what he got out of these books. And I was like, oh wow, Ra is speaking on the same thing, only just in a way more simplistic way. So again, everything is always already here, but somehow some of us can and some of us can't tap into, yeah, maybe I want to say the Akashic records. Maybe that's not the right word, but maybe it is.
And then the other thing too is that think about this in terms of death and dying processes. So in 2027, the new crystals are going to start coming in.
Yeah.
So really, these design crystals that are with our magnetic monopoles are going to go back in. They're not coming back.
They're never coming back. Yeah.
So it's not surprising to me that it's in the collective to contemplate death, because in a sense, our design crystals are not coming back.
Right.
New design crystals are coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's so fascinating and so unique about our vessels is that we are the last kind of our kind that can experience individuality.
Fascinating to contemplate. And then what else is possible, because this hasn't happened for 400 years. Will our design crystals lie there for eternity, or in the earth, inside the earth, or will they be recycled?
Good question, because suddenly a remembrance, it's, I believe in one of the last or the one before, he speaks upon that there is going to be a moment that the earth kind of explodes and that every crystal gets liberated and they get to form new crystal bundles, and then somehow, somewhere, something new will be created because they are going to clutter together. And so like even the crystals that create an organ are gonna come together with something that creates a head, so to speak, like cells. So how would that look like? We get this, I don't know what kind of being, but everything is possible.
Right. And then it just motivates me to have the most expanded experience I can, because whatever that design experience is, it's going to go back into earth. It's going to be reformed, reshaped, transformed into something else. And so, we're each going to bring whatever consciousness we bring. Exactly. So it's for the, it's just really
for the good of the entire whole. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and there was something else. We are now carbon-based, and that there's going to be silicone-based vessels. That was interesting too, but it's not what I wanted to say. Oh, I remember. He shared something about that not every soul is going to make it till that end phase. So you have the design crystals and you have like the personality crystals. And not every personality has the opportunity or is even meant to be there to experience the end phase of the earth and the explosion and everything. And he kind of says, when I think about an explosion of earth and having to be there and be present and observe that, I go like, I don't know if I want to make that, But on the other way, the way he said it, it was like this huge event in the cosmos when that happens. So you kind of want to be there at this, I'm feeling like it's a creation party because everything crumbles and then everything can start blooming again. And that's also why it's so important to die well, because then you get a chance to be at the after or at the end party, so to speak.
Right?
Yeah.
You get to be there.
Yeah. I think we get to be there. I just saw us holding hands.
And I feel such liberation from the conversation.
I felt that too. Yeah.
And I hope that for those who don't have someone to talk to or contemplate with, that this uplifts them, and maybe they'll, if anyone listens to the end about our conversation about the Bardo and all these things, that maybe they'll write a note and share their experience so they feel like they have expression or
a medium to express and to share, to be
community.
part of. Yeah, absolutely. That would be love.
All right, sister. Well,
I'm looking at
anything
the time.
else you want to share before we go? You feel complete?
I feel complete. Yeah. Again, it's not what we kind of felt like, yeah, we have to hop on together because this, and that. But I always love our conversations. And again, I trust in what wants to come through, comes through. And I don't know, it was just lovely to see you again and to get to share.
It was lovely too.
Yeah.
And maybe this is our journey. This is our story. This is our work.
In the end, we'll know.
In the end, we'll know.
Yeah.
In the end, we'll know.